In the endless black of space, there was one law that all humans followed. A rule older than any treaty, stronger than any command from Earth, and respected by every ship that carried the flag of humanity. The law was simple. Never fire first at another intelligent species. It was called the Law of the Stars, and it was written in blood and memory of the first contact wars. Humanity had learned that the universe was vast and full of life, and peace could only last if they never pulled the trigger first. This law was more than politics, it was survival, because breaking it meant every other race in the galaxy would rise against them. Generations of captains had lived by this rule. Fleets had crossed strange skies. Explorers had landed on alien shores, and though there were skirmishes, though there were threats, humans never fired first. The galaxy had grown to trust them. Humanity was seen as dangerous but disciplined, powerful but restrained, and their fleets patrolled the void as a symbol of balance. Many young officers grew up with the law drilled into their bones, and to break it was not just to defy the Council of Earth. It was to defy the very soul of humanity. Captain Alara knew this better than anyone. She had commanded warships for 20 years. Her eyes had seen battles at the edge of dying suns. Her crew had faced storms of radiation and the silence of empty space. But never had she fired first. Her ship, the Horizon's Edge, floated in the dark like a steel predator held back on a leash. Her crew trusted her judgment, and her judgment trusted the law. But deep in her chest, she sometimes wondered, what if the day came when hesitation cost them everything? The day began like any other on the edge of human space. Reports from colonies, patrol updates, routine scans, and then a signal. A distress call cut short by static. Her officers leaned forward, voices hushed. The coordinates showed a shipping lane far from safe territory, a place where smugglers sometimes prowled. Alara gave the order to change course, and the Horizon's Edge leapt forward on burning engines. The silence of space broken only by the hum of the ship's heart. When they arrived, the scene froze the crew. A civilian freighter drifted in the dark, its hull torn open. Bodies floated like shadows around the wreck, and strange burns scarred the metal. Not like human weapons, not like anything known. The comm officer whispered that the last recording had been corrupted. Fragments of voices crying out, and then silence. No warning, no demand, only death. Alara stared at the wreck and felt a weight settle in her chest, because whatever had done this had wanted it to be found. The first officer reported traces of alien energy weapons, not human design, not any registered species. The crew muttered in fear, because if it was an unknown power, then the law would be tested. Already rumors spread on the open channel, whispers that humans had fired first, that humanity had broken its only promise. Alara clenched her fists and gave the order to scan deeper, her heart pounding, because she could feel eyes on them, unseen but close, like a predator in the dark watching from the void. The Horizon's Edge drifted slowly among the ruins, its sensors sweeping every shadow. Its guns still silent, the crew ready but afraid. Then the radar lit up, a contact, massive, armored alien. A warship unknown to any database, it slid out of the black like a nightmare, its hull covered in glowing scars of power, its weapons aimed but not firing. Alara ordered her crew to hold. Not to fire, not to break the law. The silence stretched so long it felt like the universe was holding its breath. Then, without a signal, without a word, the alien ship opened fire. Beams of energy cut across the void. The freighter's remains vaporized in seconds. Shields screamed under the assault, alarms rang out. Crew shouted orders. And still Alara did not give the command to fire back. Her hands gripped the armrest, her throat dry, because the law held her in chains. If she fired first, humanity would be condemned. If she did nothing, her ship would burn. She looked at her officers and saw fear in their eyes, but also trust. They would obey, even if it killed them. The alien guns cut through the silence again, this time tearing into the shield. Metal groaned, the ship shook, sparks filled the bridge. And Alara knew the law was already broken, not by her, but by the universe itself. She felt the weight of history pressing down on her, because if her ship fell here, the galaxy would only see the wreckage, and they would believe the lie that humans had fired first. And so she whispered to herself that this was only the beginning. The first blood spilled among the stars, and no law could stop what was coming. The Horizon's Edge floated in silence after the attack. Its shields cracked, its hull scarred, and its crew shaken but not broken. Captain Alara stood at the center of the bridge, her gaze fixed on the star-speckled void outside. The alien warship that had fired on them was gone, vanished as if swallowed by the dark. The crew waited for her orders, fear whispering at the edge of their voices. No one dared say what they were all thinking, that the law of the stars had already been shattered, and humanity would pay for it in ways they could not yet imagine. The comm officer's voice broke the silence. Faint signals, Captain. Fragments from nearby outposts. Messages cut short. Whole stations not responding. Ilara tightened her jaw. Her instincts told her this was no random attack. It was a pattern. Someone was carving destruction into the edges of human space, leaving trails of broken ships and dead colonists, and worse, it was being recorded. Every shattered hull, every lifeless crew, evidence crafted to tell a story the galaxy would believe. The story that humans had drawn first blood. Ilara ordered a course set to the nearest silent colony. The ship moved forward, its engines burning faint blue trails, the crew working in tense quiet. Whispers carried through the halls of the warship. Some said humanity was doomed. Some said the aliens were testing them. Some said the Council of Earth would never forgive them if they fired back. But one thing was certain. The universe was watching, and someone wanted to paint humanity as the villain. Hours passed before the horizon's edge arrived at the colony. What they found made the crew's hearts sink. The settlement floated in ruins, domes shattered, lights extinguished, towers split open like broken bones. Drifting among the wreckage were human defense drones, their weapons still hot, their memory cores tampered, data forged to show that they had fired first on alien vessels. The deception was so perfect it made Ilara's blood run cold. Someone was planting proof, rewriting reality to frame them. The crew looked to Ilara for direction. Her second-in-command, Commander Vare, whispered, "If the Council sees this, they'll believe the evidence. They'll think humanity betrayed the law." Ilara's mind raced. If she carried this data back, it would condemn them. If she erased it, she would look guilty. Every choice was a trap. She felt the weight of centuries pressing down on her shoulders. The law that once protected humanity was now a noose tightening around their neck. As they drifted through the ruins, sensors picked up movement, faint shadows on the edge of the system. Unknown ships, not the alien warship from before. Smaller vessels, fast and silent, like wolves circling in the dark. They followed at a distance, never answering hails, never showing their weapons. The crew grew restless. Every shadow became a threat. Every blip on the radar a countdown to disaster. Ilara ordered blackout mode, the horizon's edge dimming its lights, crawling forward through the ruins like prey hiding from a predator. Hours dragged by. The silent ships kept their distance. Then one vanished, then another, then all. As if they had never been there, the crew held their breath, waiting for the trap, but none came. Only the emptiness of space and the weight of their fear. Ilara knew the enemy was playing a longer game, not destroying them outright, but letting them live, to carry the false story back, to spread the lie further. She whispered to herself, "They want us alive, they want us guilty." And the thought made her stomach twist on the bridge. The youngest officer, Ensign Kale, finally spoke, his voice breaking the heavy silence. "Captain, why don't we fight? Why don't we strike first before they destroy us?" His eyes were wide with desperation. The crew turned to listen, even though they knew the answer. Ilara's voice was steady. "Because the moment we fire first, the galaxy will believe the lie. The law is all we have left." But in her heart, she felt the bitter truth. The law was already shattered, and the pieces were cutting them deeper with each passing hour. Suddenly, the alarm screamed. The horizon's edge detected a hidden signal, a transmission piggybacking on the colony ruins. Not human, not any known species. A whisper in the void repeating again and again. "First strike confirmed. Humanity guilty. First strike confirmed. Humanity guilty." The voice echoed through the bridge like a death sentence. The crew looked at one another with dread, because it was not just a lie, it was a weapon, and it was being broadcast to the galaxy. Ilara ordered the signal traced. The crew worked feverishly, triangulating coordinates. The source was close, too close, hidden behind a shattered moon fragment. A stealth ship, cloaked in shadows, transmitting poison into the stars. The horizon's edge turned its guns toward it. The crew waited for the command, their hands trembling, because if they fired, they would save themselves but break the law. If they did nothing, the lie would spread until humanity was destroyed. The silence stretched into eternity. Ilara's voice finally cut through. "Lock weapons but hold fire." Her crew obeyed. The guns hummed with power, aimed but restrained. The stealth ship must have felt their aim, because in a blink it vanished into the void. Its engines burning a trail like a scar across the stars. The transmission cut off, but not before it had already spread across countless relays. The damage was done, the lie was seeded, and soon it would bloom into war. The horizon's edge drifted once more in silence, its crew shaken to their core. Humanity had not fired a shot, and yet the galaxy would soon believe they had betrayed the only law that kept peace. Ilara looked at the stars, her voice quiet but firm. They are building a story, and we are the villains. The crew stared at her, fear in their eyes, and she knew the time of silence was ending soon. They would have to choose between survival and the law, and whichever path they chose, blood would follow. The horizon's edge moved through the void like a wounded beast, its engines dimmed, its crew tense, every man and woman aboard waiting for the next shadow to strike. Captain Ilara sat rigid in her command chair, the weight of silence pressing down heavier than the stars themselves. The galaxy believed the lie now. She could feel it, like a storm building on the horizon. Every whisper from the comms spoke the same verdict. Humanity had broken the law of the stars, and punishment was coming. They reached the outer ring of an abandoned mining station. The place was nothing more than a graveyard. Broken drills drifting, cargo pods split open, and a thin field of frozen bodies circling the ruins like a silent warning. The ship's lights cut across twisted beams of metal, and the crew shivered at the sight. This was no accident, it was a message. And the message was clear: humans were the enemy. Then it happened. The radar lit up, not one signal but many. Alien ships sliding out from the dark, their hulls black with jagged edges glowing faintly with orange power, their formation tight, their silence more frightening than words. They blocked every exit, a net closing in. The bridge filled with nervous breaths, and then the first beam of energy split the darkness. Striking a drifting cargo shell and reducing it to dust, the aliens had not spoken, not hailed, not demanded, they simply fired. And the law crumbled under their assault. The horizon's edge shook under the next barrage. Shields flared bright, sparks raining across consoles, crewmen thrown to the floor. Ilara's voice was calm but iron. "Hold the line. Return fire only if we cannot survive." The crew obeyed, though their hands trembled. The law still chained them, but the chains were snapping one by one as death pressed closer. Another blast hit, tearing a scar into the side of the warship. Alarm screamed, oxygen venting, damage spreading. On the second deck, Lieutenant Mara shouted into her headset, "Hull breach in Sector 12. Sealing bulkheads, sealing bulkheads." The sound of her voice carried to the bridge, a reminder that every second they waited, lives were being lost. Commander Vare leaned close to Ilara, his voice low. "If we don't fire, Captain, they'll tear us apart piece by piece." Ilara's jaw clenched, her heart pounding with the knowledge that he was right. Yet the law hung over her like a ghost, whispering that if she struck first, humanity was doomed. Then the alien ships shifted. Two broke formation, circling like predators, their weapons targeting the horizon's edge directly. The next volley was not meant to scare, it was meant to kill. The impact ripped through the shields. Metal screeched, the ship lurched sideways, and for the first time in her long career, Ilara felt the cold touch of helplessness. She looked at her crew, at their eyes wide with fear, at their hands gripping weapons they were forbidden to use, and she knew in that instant, hesitation would destroy them all. Her voice cut through the chaos, weapons free, return fire, and in that moment the law of the stars died in the heart of every human aboard. The horizon's edge roared to life, rail cannons spitting fire, missile bays opening like wings, lasers burning across the void. The first alien cruiser staggered under the barrage, its hull splitting, its glowing veins bursting. The explosion lit up the battlefield like a second sun. The crew shouted, some in relief, some in rage, the silence of restraint replaced by the fury of survival. But victory came at a price. Another alien ship swooped in, its weapons carving into the horizon's edge, ripping through engines, setting the hangar ablaze. Fighter pilots died before they could even launch. The bridge trembled under the assault, and the ship's doctor screamed over the comms, casualties mounting. "We can't hold." But Ilara's voice did not break. "Focus fire on their lead ship. Cut off the head and the rest will scatter." The crew obeyed, their hands steady now, the fear burned away by fury. The battle raged like thunder in the void, ships darting, guns blazing. The horizon's edge moved like a wounded predator, scarred but unyielding. And when its final volley struck the alien flagship, tearing it in half, the rest of the enemy broke formation, retreating into the black like shadows, fleeing the light. The silence returned, heavy, broken only by the sound of damaged systems sparking and the ragged breaths of survivors. The crew stared at the wreckage, at the drifting bodies, at the proof of their victory. But no one cheered, because they all knew what this meant. The law had been broken, not in secret, not in whispers, but in fire for all to see. The galaxy would hear of this battle, and they would not see survival. They would see betrayal. The humans had fired upon another species, destroyed their ships and spilled blood no matter the truth. No matter who had struck first, history would remember it differently, and humanity's sentence was already being written in the stars. Ilara sank into her chair, the weight of command crushing her. She had saved her ship but doomed her people. Commander Vare stood beside her, his voice rough. "We had no choice, Captain. It was them or us." Ilara did not answer, her eyes fixed on the wreckage outside. Knowing that choice or not, the galaxy would not forgive, she whispered to herself. "This is only the beginning. The first blood has been spilled and now war will come." The crew around her sat in silence, each one knowing they had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The stars no longer watched in peace, they watched in judgment, and they would not be kind. The news of the battle spread faster than light, carried across relays, whispered through trade routes, and broadcast on channels that reached every corner of the galaxy. By the time the horizon's edge limped back toward safe space, the story had already taken root. Humanity had fired first. Humanity had destroyed alien ships. Humanity had broken the one law that bound all civilizations together, the law of the stars. And though Captain Ilara knew the truth, she also knew the galaxy would not care about truth, only about blood spilled. When the horizon's edge finally docked at a council station orbiting the neutral world of Venos, the crew walked out not as survivors but as suspects. Alien eyes followed them through the corridors, eyes filled with suspicion, fear, and in some cases hatred. Soldiers stood guard at every entrance, and the crew whispered among themselves, wondering if they would be arrested, wondering if they would see Earth again. Ilara walked at the front, her uniform scorched, her shoulders straight, refusing to let the weight of judgment bow her. The council chamber was a cathedral of stone and light, massive arches stretching upward, banners of 100 species hanging in solemn silence. At the center stood the council table, an endless ring where representatives of each race sat in judgment. When Ilara stepped into the chamber, the sound of murmurs rolled like a storm. A human warship captain accused of starting a galactic war. The guard stopped her at the center of the circle, her figure small under the weight of 1,000 staring eyes. A voice boomed, the voice of the Therian, a crystalline species who had once fought humanity, but had long since respected their restraint. "Captain Ilara, you stand accused of violating the law of the stars. You stand accused of firing first, of spilling blood, of endangering every world. How do you plead?" The words echoed across the chamber. Sharp as knives, Ilara's throat tightened, but her voice was steady. "I plead not guilty. I plead survival. I plead that we were attacked, that we defended ourselves." Her words rang out, but the chamber murmured louder. Distrust growing like wildfire, evidence was called forth. A projection lit the air, showing the ruins of colonies, the wrecks of ships and twisted recordings, all doctored, all forged. Every image screamed that humanity had fired first, that humanity had become aggressor. The Velkari's deception was perfect. Every scrap of false proof stitched into a story that condemned her people. Ilara clenched her fists, rage burning beneath her calm mask, but she said nothing, because to shout too loud would make her sound guilty. To show too much fire would make her look like the aggressor they already believed she was. The human ambassador stood beside her, an older man named Corvin, his voice trembling with the weight of history. "Council members, humanity has always upheld the law. For centuries we have never fired first. We have held the line when others faltered. You know us, you know our history." But his words fell into silence. No one wanted to believe him, because fear was easier, fear was louder, and fear painted humanity as the monster in the dark. One counselor, a serpent like Zorathi, hissed across the table. "If humans have truly kept this law so close to their hearts, then why now? Why break it? Why strike first against ships that sought only peace?" Ilara wanted to shout, to stand, to tell them what she saw, the alien warships sliding from shadows, the first beams of fire ripping through her shields, the voices of her dying crew. But the council chamber was no battlefield. Here truth was twisted into politics, and politics was more dangerous than any enemy ship. Then came the witnesses, survivors from nearby colonies, their faces pale with fear, their memories scarred. But even they had been fooled by the forged transmissions. One miner swore he saw human drones fire first. Another claimed the horizon's edge destroyed a freighter unprovoked. Ilara's jaw tightened. She wanted to cry out that these were lies, that these were illusions planted to destroy them. But she could see the truth in their eyes. They believed it. The deception had cut so deep it had replaced reality in their minds. The council's voices rose in fury. Punishments suggested sanctions, exile, war. Some demanded humanity's fleets be dismantled. Some whispered of blockades around Earth. The chamber became a storm of voices, and above it all, Alara stood silent, her heart pounding, because she knew what none of them yet understood. The Velkhari were not done. This was not only about framing humanity. This was about breaking the law so thoroughly that no species would trust it again. About plunging the galaxy into chaos where they could rule as predators among prey. When silence finally fell, the Therian spoke again. Humanity is given one chance. Bring proof of your innocence or face judgment. The chamber erupted once more, but Alara's focus sharpened, because in those words she heard the path ahead. They would not listen to arguments. They would not believe words. Only proof could save her people, and proof was hidden in the shadows of the enemy. Proof that would cost blood to uncover as Alara left the chamber. The weight of every eye on her back, she whispered to herself. They want us guilty, they want us broken, but I will not let them. Her crew followed close. Some pale, some furious, some already ready for war. And though fear gnawed at them, one truth bound them tighter than ever before. They had survived the first battle. They had spilled first blood, and now the galaxy was sharpening its knives against them. The trial was only the beginning. The true war was still to come, and Alara knew they would have to fight it in the shadows and in the stars. The council chamber faded behind them, but the echo of its judgment followed Captain Alara and her crew like a curse. Humanity had been branded guilty in the eyes of the stars. Given one chance to prove innocence, and even that chance felt like a thin blade pressed against their throat. As the horizon's edge drifted away from the neutral station, the crew's silence was heavy, each one lost in the same thought. How do you prove truth when the galaxy prefers the lie? Alara stood at the viewing deck. The stars stretched before her like a field of cold fire, her mind replaying every moment of the ambush, the alien ship sliding from the dark, the beams of energy tearing through her hull. The forged transmissions that spread guilt across the stars. None of it random, none of it chance. Someone was moving the pieces of a vast game, and humanity was the pawn to be sacrificed. She whispered the word like a curse, Velkhari, the name pulled from half-whispered reports. Ghost stories told by fringe traders, a species known only in rumors, warlike, cunning, and hungry for domination. The first officer, Commander Vare, approached quietly, his voice low. Captain, our intelligence reports match your suspicion. The Velkhari exist, they've been working in shadows for decades, but no one has ever caught them in the act. He placed a datapad in her hands, and as she scrolled through it, Alara saw fragments. Black market recordings of strange ships, old wrecks with unfamiliar weapon burns, colonies abandoned overnight, always dismissed as piracy, always explained away until now the pattern was clear. The Velkhari had been laying the groundwork, preparing the galaxy to believe their deception in the war room. The crew gathered. Officers bent over maps of star systems, fragments of intercepted transmissions, whispers carried through deep space relays. One message stood out, a faint Velkhari command signal bouncing between hidden nodes. Short, sharp, coded in a way no other species used. The comm officer's hands trembled as he translated. Directive complete, humans blamed. Directive complete, next phase begins. The room went silent, the weight of the words pressing down. The enemy was not only framing humanity, they were planning more. Ensign Kale, the youngest of the officers, leaned forward, his eyes burning with anger. We have proof. This signal shows they set us up. If we bring this to the council, they'll have to believe us. But Alara shook her head, her voice grim. No, a signal isn't enough. The Velkhari know how to cover their tracks. The council will call it a fabrication. If we want proof, we need to catch them in the act. We need to show the galaxy their hand before they can hide it again. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, because to hunt the Velkhari was to step into the jaws of the predator. The horizon's edge changed course, chasing the faint trail of the Velkhari transmission. Every jump carried them deeper into uncharted space. Stars grew colder, systems more desolate, entire sectors abandoned. The silence felt unnatural, as though the galaxy itself avoided the Velkhari's domain. In the dark of the ship, fear whispered. Crewmen spoke of curses, of ghosts, of fleets that entered these regions and never returned. Alara walked the corridors at night, her boots echoing against steel, and she could feel the same chill. But she did not waver, because she knew the truth was somewhere in this darkness. Days passed before they found it, at the edge of a dead sun, hidden behind shattered asteroids. A fleet, not human, not council. A fleet of Velkari warships, black hulls bristling with weapons, engines glowing like molten veins, their numbers vast, their formation perfect, waiting like predators before a hunt. The horizon's edge drifted silent, cloaked as best it could, every crew member holding their breath as the sight filled the view screens, proof at last, but also terror. Because this was no raiding party, this was an invasion force, large enough to burn entire sectors to ash. Alara's heart pounded as she gave the order. Record everything, every ship, every weapon, every signal. This is the truth the council must see. The crew worked feverishly, sensors capturing, cameras rolling, data pouring in. But as they worked, one of the Velkari ships turned, its sensors sweeping, its engines burning brighter. The comm officer whispered, "Captain, I think they see us." The bridge fell silent, every eye fixed on the alien ship that now moved like a predator scenting prey. The Velkari cruiser broke formation, heading straight toward them, its weapons lighting. Alara clenched her fists, voice steady but cold. Full power to engines, evasive maneuvers. The horizon's edge leapt into motion, weaving between asteroids, shields flaring as the first barrage struck. The crew shouted warnings, damage reports filling the air, but they held on, engines burning at the edge of collapse. And still the Velkari pursued, relentless, hungry, determined to destroy the only witness to their secret. Through the chaos, Alara's eyes burned with defiance. They wanted humanity guilty. They wanted the galaxy blind, but she would not let the truth be silenced. She ordered the data transmitted, compressed into tight beam signals, sent across hidden relays back toward council space. Every strike against her ship made the signal falter, every hit cut deeper, but she shouted above the alarms, "Send it, send everything, even if we don't survive. The galaxy must see them." The horizon's edge shuddered as another blast tore through its hull. Fires broke out on the lower decks, screams echoed through the comms. The ship was dying, but the transmission light flickered green. Confirmation, the data was away. Alara exhaled, relief and fury mixing in her chest. The Velkari might destroy them, but they would not destroy the truth. The galaxy would see the predator hiding in the shadows. The galaxy would know humanity was not the monster. The Velkari ship loomed larger in the view, weapons glowing, ready for the kill. The crew braced for impact, hearts pounding. The law of the stars forgotten now. Survival and vengeance the only things left. Alara whispered to herself as the ship shook under fire. "You wanted us guilty, you wanted us broken. But now the galaxy will see you for what you are." And her eyes blazed with a promise. This was not the end. This was the beginning of a war that would light the stars in blood and fire. The transmission had gone out, but the price was heavy. The horizon's edge staggered back into human space like a battered ghost. Hull ripped, decks burning, crew bruised and bloodied, yet alive. The proof of Velkari treachery now scattered across council relays. Alara hoped it would be enough. Hoped the galaxy would finally see the truth, but hope was fragile, and war was already rising like fire across the stars. By the time the ship reached the nearest outpost, news had already spread, colonies burning, trade convoys shattered, frontier fleets torn apart. The Velkari had struck openly at last. Not shadows, not whispers, but full fleets sweeping through border systems, their warships black as night, their weapons carving through defenses with merciless precision. Humanity fought back, but everywhere the story was the same. Blood, fire, and silence. The law of the stars lay in ruins, and all that remained was survival. Alara stood in the War Council on Mars, surrounded by admirals, generals, and commanders. The holographic map before them glowed red with spreading Velkari attacks, entire sectors falling in days, lines of retreat cut, colonies abandoned, fleets shattered. One admiral slammed his fist on the table. "We warned them, we told the council this law would kill us. Now look, they're at our door." Another voice, cold and bitter, asked the question none wanted to face: how long until Earth itself burns? Silence followed, heavy as gravity. No one had an answer. The proof of Velkari deceit had reached the council, but it was too late. Some species believed, others did not. Some said it was fabricated. Others said even if it was true, humanity had still fired first. Trust had been shattered, alliances fractured. Many races chose to stand back, to watch humanity fight alone, afraid of choosing the wrong side. Alara's heart burned at the betrayal. She had delivered the truth, but the galaxy preferred fear over justice, and so humanity stood alone at the edge of extinction. The horizon's edge was repaired as best as possible, its wounds patched with desperate hands, its engines limping but functional. Alara's crew returned to her one by one, battered but determined. The fear that once whispered in their eyes now burned into something sharper. Rage the Valkyrie wanted to break humanity. But instead they had forged steel, and Alara knew her warship, scarred though it was, would be the tip of the spear in the battles to come. When the Valkyrie fleet struck the colony world of Asteron, humanity answered with fire. The horizon's edge led a squadron of warships through the black, their engines burning blue trails, their weapons primed. The Valkyrie descended like wolves, their ships sleek and bristling. But this time humanity did not wait. This time they fired first, the void lit up with rail cannons, missile storms, and beams of searing light. The two fleets collided in a storm of destruction, warships burning, escape pods drifting, and the stars themselves painted with fire. The horizon's edge roared through the chaos, its guns pounding, its missiles carving holes into Valkyrie hulls. Fighters launched from its bays, weaving through enemy fire, their pilots screaming war cries into the void. Alara stood tall on the bridge, every command sharp, every order a blade. Her crew moved with precision born of desperation, and for the first time the Valkyrie ships faltered, not expecting resistance so fierce, not expecting prey to bare its fangs. But the cost was heavy. Ships exploded in blinding flashes. Human voices cut short mid-scream. The bridge shook as enemy fire ripped through shields. Bulkheads buckled. Alarms screamed one by one. Human warships fell, their wrecks spinning lifeless into the dark. The battle was no victory, it was survival. Every inch bought with lives, every second bought with sacrifice. But the Valkyrie advance slowed, their formation breaking. Their confidence shaken, humanity had bled. But it had not bowed on the colony below. The civilians watched from bunkers as the sky burned. The ground shook with impacts. Children cried, families huddled. But when the Valkyrie finally pulled back, when the horizon's edge and the remnants of its fleet hung scarred but unbroken above them, hope sparked where despair had ruled. The sight of a battered human warship still standing was enough to remind them they were not yet defeated, not yet conquered. Word of the battle spread across human space, tales of the horizon's edge, of Captain Alara's defiance, of humanity refusing to die, and slowly, like embers in the dark, those tales caught fire. Scattered colonies sent ships, broken fleets regrouped, civilians volunteered. An army was being born not from command but from will, from the unyielding truth that survival was worth any price. Alara became a symbol, her warship a legend, whispered about in refugee camps and military halls alike. Yet Alara knew the war was only beginning. The Valkyrie had pulled back, but not because they were defeated. They were testing, measuring, learning. The real assault was still to come. She stood alone on the viewing deck after the battle, the stars stretching endless before her. Her reflection ghosted in the glass. She whispered to herself, "They want to break us, but they will find we do not break. We burn." And her words carried the promise of what was to come. Because humanity had tasted war in the stars, and though blood had been spilled, though countless lives had been lost, the fire of resistance had been lit and it would not go out. The Valkyrie had awoken something ancient in mankind, something forged in centuries of struggle, and now the galaxy would see what humanity truly was when pushed to the edge. Not prey, not villains, but survivors and warriors. The war had only begun and the stars would burn with its fury. The war burned across the stars. Every day another colony fell. Every night another fleet was lost, but still humanity fought on, scarred yet unyielding like steel hammered in fire. Captain Alara and the horizon's edge had become a symbol, a story told in whispers across bunkers and refugee ships. Yet Alara knew the truth behind the legend. Humanity was losing. The Valkyrie were too many, too ruthless, too precise. If something did not change, Earth itself would burn within the year on the War Council's holographic map. The galaxy glowed red, Valkyrie fleets pushing deeper, encircling humanity's last bastions. The admirals argued, voices sharp with desperation. Some demanded retreat to defend the homeworlds. Others shouted for one final offensive, but Alara stood silent, her eyes fixed on the burning pattern. She saw what others could not. The Valkyrie's strength was not endless. It was directed, focused from one point, a command nexus hidden at the heart of their empire. Destroy that and the beast would bleed. When she spoke, the room fell silent, her voice calm, steady, but carrying the weight of finality. We cannot win fighting system by system. We cannot match them ship for ship, but cut off the head and the body will collapse. I will lead a mission to strike their command world. Gasps echoed, voices erupted. Suicide, madness, impossible. The Velkari homeworld was a fortress bristling with fleets. Yet Alara did not flinch. If we fall here defending scraps of space, humanity dies anyway. Better to strike where it matters. Better to risk everything on one blade aimed at their heart. The council voted, some in fear, some in rage, some in reluctant hope, and the decision was made. A single fleet would go, not large, not obvious, but sharp and fast. A spear thrust into the dark. Alara was given command, and though she knew it was a death sentence, she accepted with iron resolve, because if the stars were to be humanity's grave, she would carve their name there with fire. The horizon's edge prepared for its final mission, its hull patched, its weapons reloaded, its engines humming with the fury of survival. The crew returned one by one, some veterans scarred by countless battles, some new recruits barely past youth, but all with the same fire in their eyes. They knew where they were going. They knew they might never return, but none turned away. Ensign Kale said it best, his voice firm as he strapped into his station. If we are to die, let it be in the heart of the enemy. Not waiting for them to come to us, the fleet gathered. A dozen warships, battered survivors of endless battles, each one a monument of steel and stubbornness. They set course into the black silence filling the bridges. Every star they passed felt like a farewell. Every jump carried them closer to the jaws of the predator, and yet morale did not break for the first time. There was no more hiding, no more waiting. They were going to end it, or die trying. Days stretched into weeks as they crossed the void. Velkari patrols lurked everywhere. The horizon's edge dodged, fought, and bled. Ships were lost along the way, their wrecks left behind like markers of sacrifice. Yet the fleet pressed on, through ambushes, through traps, through storms of enemy fire, until finally, the Velkari home system loomed before them, a dark star glowing faintly with crimson light, its planets wrapped in armor, fleets encircling like vultures, and at the center the command world, a sphere of black stone and fire. The beating heart of the Velkari war machine. Alara stood on her bridge, eyes fixed on the impossible sight, her crew silent around her, every console glowing with warning lights, every system stretched to the limit. She gave the order with no hesitation. All ships forward. This is our stand, this is our strike. Engines roared, weapons primed. The human fleet surged toward the impossible fortress. Alarms screamed as Velkari warships swarmed to meet them. The void erupted in fire. Rail cannons thundered. Missiles streaked, beams carved. The battle was chaos, fleets colliding, stars burning with the fury of war. The horizon's edge tore through enemy lines, its guns blazing, its hull scarred but unyielding. Fighters swarmed like sparks around it, pilots shouting defiance into the dark. Human ships fell one by one, their deaths lighting the path for the survivors. Every loss a step closer to the target. Ilara's voice never wavered, cut through, break them. We are the blade, and the crew obeyed. Their fear burned away by purpose at last. The planet loomed close, its shields a wall of fire, its surface bristling with guns. Alara gave the order. All power to weapons. All power to engines. One final charge. The fleet surged, ships colliding with enemy cruisers, sacrificing themselves to clear a path. The horizon's edge dove straight into the storm, its shields burning away, its hull tearing open, alarms screaming, fires consuming decks, but still it pressed forward, like a predator refusing to fall, like humanity itself refusing to bow. Commander Vare turned to Alara, his voice rough. If we hit that shield, we won't survive. Alara's eyes blazed. Then we make sure they don't survive either. She ordered the last of their missiles armed, their reactor overloaded. A suicide run. The crew understood. None flinched, none begged. They had chosen this end long ago. The horizon's edge became a spear of fire, plunging into the Velkari world shield, tearing through defenses, every weapon blazing. Every life aboard offered to carve a wound the enemy would never heal. As the ship screamed toward impact, Alara whispered to herself, to her crew, to her people, if humanity must die, let it die standing, not crawling. And in that final moment, when the horizon's edge struck the heart of the Velkari world, the stars lit with an explosion that shook the void, a burst of fire and fury so bright it was seen across sectors, a sacrifice that burned a scar into the galaxy forever. The blast of the horizon's edge shook the void like the roar of a dying god. Light brighter than suns split the darkness. Waves of fire tore through the Velkari command world shield, burning through the fortress that had stood unchallenged for centuries. For one endless moment, the galaxy itself seemed to tremble. Then silence followed, vast and terrible. broken only by the drifting wreckage of ships and the smoldering remains of humanity's last spear. News of the strike spread faster than light, carried by fleeing survivors, by fragments of transmissions, by the very flames that lit the system. The Velkhari had been wounded, their command nexus broken, their fleets thrown into confusion. For the first time since the war began, the predators staggered, their endless hunger slowed. But the price was written in blood. Almost every human ship that charged into that hell was gone. Names whispered only in mourning, heroes remembered only by the silence they left behind. Among the wreckage, fragments of the horizon's edge drifted like shattered bones, but in those fragments lay the story that would outlive them all. Captain Alara's last words, recorded by the ship's dying systems, sent across the stars even as her vessel burned. If humanity must die, let it die standing, not crawling. Those words spread like wildfire, carried into bunkers, onto refugee ships, into the hearts of soldiers still fighting. A spark that turned despair into fury, grief into defiance. The Velkhari retaliated, their fleet striking back with vengeance. Whole sectors burned, but their unity faltered, their precision cracked. Without the guidance of their command nexus, their armadas became scattered, their movements predictable, and humanity, broken though it was, learned to fight smarter. Guerrilla strikes, ambushes in asteroid belts, raids on supply lines. Every scarred warship became a phantom, every surviving fighter pilot a blade in the dark. And slowly, against all odds, the tide shifted, but the victory was not clean. Earth itself bore the scars, cities turned to ash, oceans poisoned by falling wrecks, families shattered by names on casualty lists that stretched into millions. No one was untouched, no one unbroken. Humanity had survived, but survival had come at the cost of innocence. The law of the stars, the sacred rule that once defined them, was gone, burned away in the fire of necessity. They had fired first and last, and always now they would be remembered as the species that broke the one law the galaxy trusted. And yet, in refugee camps, in the dark halls of surviving colonies, in the ruins of council chambers where alien voices once condemned them, Ilara's sacrifice was remembered not as betrayal, but as defiance. More and more species, seeing the truth of the Velkhari treachery, turned their hatred not against humanity but against the predators who had provoked it all. Alliances slowly rekindled, cautious but real, and whispers spread that perhaps the law had been doomed from the beginning, that no rule could hold back survival when predators hunted in the dark. The last surviving crew of the horizon's edge were found weeks later, escape pods drifting near a shattered moon. Half dead, burned, but alive. Their stories only deepened the legend. They spoke of Ilara's calm on the bridge, of her steady voice as the ship tore into the Velkhari fortress, of her refusal to let fear break them even at the end. Her name was etched into walls, carved into statues, carried in songs, not just as a captain, but as the spirit of humanity itself, a symbol that they had refused to die quietly. The Velkhari still roamed the stars, their fleet still dangerous, their hatred still burning, but they were no longer the untouchable predators. They were wounded, hunted, forced to bleed as they once made others bleed. And humanity, scarred and reshaped, had risen from the ashes stronger, more ruthless and more united than ever before. Where once they had been bound by the law of peace, now they were bound by something fiercer, a vow that if the stars demanded blood, then humanity would not shy from giving it. The galaxy watched in silence as the war slowed, no longer a clean struggle of right and wrong, but a shadow war fought in broken systems, yet even in silence. The legend of the horizon's edge lived on, carried by those who had seen it, blaze its way into the heart of the Velkhari world. A reminder that when the law failed, when the stars turned against them, humanity had not surrendered. They had fought, they had burned, and in burning, they had survived, and so the story ended where it began. With blood and with fire, the law of the stars shattered forever. The council humbled, the Velkhari wounded, and humanity scarred but unbroken. In the vast silence of the void, Ilara's words lingered, whispered by survivors, carried in the hum of rebuilt ships, etched into the memory of every soldier who looked into the black and prepared to fight again. If humanity must die, let it die standing, not crawling. And in those words was not just an ending, but a beginning. For though the stars still waited with cold eyes, they would never again look upon mankind as prey, because the law was gone. The galaxy was changed, and humanity had proven the one truth no deception could erase. They were survivors. They were fighters, and when pushed to the edge, they would paint the stars in blood and fire,